Have you ever wondered how many ancestors you have? Just 4 generations back, you have a total of 30 direct ancestors. This includes your 2 parents, 4 grandparents, and 8 great-grandparents. That's a lot of people who have contributed to your family tree. If we keep doubling the number of ancestors at each generation, we quickly realize that just 40 generations ago, we would have had over 1 trillion ancestors all living at the same time. It's hard to wrap our heads around the idea that so many people could have existed at the same time. That would be more people than have ever lived on Earth. It's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way. So clearly, this can't be the case. In reality, there have only been about 7,000 or 8,000 generations of humans since our species first appeared on the scene around 200,000 years ago. That's still a lot of people, but it's a far cry from 1 trillion. Where did all of the missing ancestors go? Well, it's likely that there was some amount of inbreeding in our family tree. However, it is inevitable that every family tree will have some branches that intersect, or in other words, some amount of inbreeding. Before the advent of dating apps like Tinder, our options for finding a mate were often limited to the people who lived within walking distance. Even some of the most renowned figures in history, such as Charles Darwin and Albert Einstein, married their first cousins. In the past, with limited options for finding a spouse, it was not uncommon for people to marry within their own extended family. When people with shared ancestors reproduce, it reduces the number of unique ancestors we have. So, in reality, our number of ancestors is much smaller than what basic math would suggest. When we use more advanced math to take into account how people moved, lived, and paired up, as well as factors like life expectancy, trade, geography, and even the influence of powerful figures like Genghis Khan, we find something interesting. It turns out that every single person alive today shares a common ancestor in their family tree, and this person lived around 3,000 years ago. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly who that person was, but it's a reminder of the interconnectedness of humanity. So the next time you find yourself in an argument with a stranger on the internet, just remember that you both probably share the same distant ancestor. According to the math, this common ancestor of all humanity must have existed, but they didn't leave behind any physical evidence like fossils or artifacts. It's like they just disappeared without a trace, except for the genetic legacy they left behind in all of us. It's a mystery that continues to fascinate scientists and researchers. It would have been a nice gesture if this common ancestor of all humanity had left behind a note or something to acknowledge their descendants, who number in the billions. Can you imagine trying to write birthday cards for all 7.4 billion of your great-great-grandchildren? That's a lot of people to keep track of. Our genes contain a record of our ancestors because DNA is copied over and over again as cells divide. Sometimes, mistakes or mutations occur during this process. It's kind of like making a copy of a copy, where the quality starts to degrade with each successive copy. However, most of our DNA can be changed without affecting how our bodies function. So many of these mutations are passed down to the next generation. These mutations can help scientists trace our ancestry and learn more about our history. By studying the genetic changes that accumulate over time, scientists can use our DNA like a molecular clock to estimate how much time has passed. They can also use these changes to determine how closely or distantly related different individuals are, despite the many ways that humans can seem different from one another. But on a DNA level, we are remarkably similar. It's interesting to note that groups of chimpanzees living right next to each other in Central Africa show more genetic variation than is found in the entire human population. This suggests that our species is relatively new in the grand scheme of things, and that at some point in our history, our population was small, possibly as few as 10,000 individuals. Although we are all very similar on a genetic level, there are still some differences among humans. In fact, Any two humans only differ by about 1 out of every 1,000 DNA-based pairs. That might not seem like a lot, but with a genome as large as ours, that still amounts to millions of single-letter differences, or SNP, single nucleotide polymorphisms, although we tend to see certain combinations of these changes, or chunks of SNP, associated with different geographic locations. This can help researchers trace the migration patterns of different populations and learn more about human history. Companies that offer DNA ancestry testing use advanced techniques to read thousands of single-letter changes, or SNPs, in your genome to create a unique signature of your genetic variation. They then compare this signature to reference individuals from various parts of the world and use complex math to determine which parts of your genome are most likely to have come from certain geographic regions. This helps them determine your ancestry and trace your family's migration patterns. It's not uncommon for people to learn about ancestry they didn't know they had. Our appearance doesn't always reflect our genetic makeup. DNA testing allows us to delve deeper and uncover the truth about our ancestry, no matter how it may be reflected on the outside. We previously discussed how math has helped us identify a common ancestor who lived around 3,000 years ago and is related to all of us. However, over time, this person's genetic influence has been shuffled so much that it is no longer visible in our DNA today. Despite this, their legacy lives on in the genetic similarities that we all share as a species. It's possible that there is someone whose genes have been passed on, unbroken, to the present day. In other words, there could be a single individual whose genetic fingerprint is still present in the DNA of every person alive today. Did you know that you have a 47th chromosome? In addition to the 46 chromosomes found in the nucleus of your cells, this chromosome, known as the mitochondrial DNA, is located in the mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of the cell. Unlike your other 46 chromosomes, the mitochondrial DNA is passed down from generation to generation without any shuffling, and all of your mitochondria come from your mother's egg, not your father's sperm. As a result, the mitochondrial DNA can be used to trace an unbroken line of ancestors through the female members of your family tree. By studying the mitochondrial DNA, scientists have been able to trace it back to a single woman who lived in Africa around 150,000 years ago. This woman, who is referred to as mitochondrial Eve, the most recent common ancestor of all humanity on the female side of the family tree. While other Homo sapiens females lived at the same time as Eve, only her lineage has survived to the present day. All other Homo sapiens lineages are extinct. This means that every single person on Earth is a direct descendant of Eve, even if we are separated by many generations. In a way, we really are all family. No matter how distant our relationship may be, our ancestry isn't just a record of the past, but it also shapes our future. We now have more power than ever before to influence the course of human evolution, even down to the genetic level. This raises questions about what the future of our species might look like.